Hello humans, this is the Artist with a Fro, and welcome back to Twitchy Terrible Thursdays. Uh, First off, I want to say again, Happy New Year to all of those that are just newly joining us here on the stream. This is the Good Night Games stream, where we basically, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we fluctuate between talking about game dev stuff and some of the ins and outs in regards to what it is like being a game developer and some of the current projects that we're working on. So, again, just for all of our new viewers, our Tuesday regular streams are going to be our sort of test tube Tuesdays where we're testing and displaying some of the things that we're working on with some of our upcoming games or our post or pre-released games that we have. Our Thursday streams and some of our Sunday streams will be more along the lines of sort of the story kind of interactions and a little bit of a workflow in regards to what we do here at Goodnight Games and what we have in store for maybe the future, but also some of like our personal projects and so on and so forth. So, introductions aside, uh, my alias or my the alias that I will go with for this come back, I guess, of a stream, since this has kind of been I guess we've kind of taken a week off, I believe, and now we're coming back and we're going to be a little bit more consistent. The alias I'm going to be using is the Artist with the Fro. The other name that I usually do go by is Kai, but I think I'll just stick with Artist or Art for now. Going back to the stream, what you guys are going to be looking at right now is Unreal Engine, and I'll be running through some of the basics in regards to what we're going to be doing for probably the next 2 hours. So, going back to the introductions, Good Night Games, some of the news that we're going to be covering in regards to things that we're working on or things that we've done so far. We have one of our games that is in production or in the pipeline to be released, Malevolent Machines, which will be releasing February 7th. I believe that is the release date. It's an endless runner game where you have to jump, slide, and attack oncoming enemies, as well as control a technomancing giant juggerbot, which can shoot down some of the other enemies that are either too high or too big for your character to reach. So it's a dual style playing game where you switch in and out between the person on the foreground, and the robot in the background, and as you move horizontally across the screen, you are attacking some oncoming enemies in different varying shapes and sizes, and confronting them with your sort of technomancy skills and your ability to sort of manipulate and control machines, as well as your maneuverability to dodge certain attacks and also repel some of the attacks back at your opponents. So, again, the name of the game is Malevolent Machines. Release date, I believe, is February 7th. Please check it out. All the links are in the description at the front of this video and will be at the end of this video. Again, if you want to follow us here on YouTube, this is the channel to be at. We do also have a Twitch, a Tumblr, Facebook, and an Instagram, all under the same name. So check us out there if you want to know anything in regards to that. And in regards to the stream itself, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them either in the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the bar on the side if you're watching this on Twitch. So that pretty much covers the upcoming game that we've had. In regards to previous games that we've released, Ernie vs. Evil is also out on the iOS and App Store. It is a zombie shooter game, very similar to I would actually no, we're not even going to compare. It's a it's a different type of zombie shooter game. I recommend anyone that's interested in that sort of genre to check it out. You more or less have like a fort style defense, so I guess it is very similar to Plants vs. Zombies. However, there are different upgrades that you get and different enemies that you will have to face in regards to how the enemies come at you from the certain side of the screen. Another game that we do have that we have had released is Namaste Space Buffalo, another puzzle-based game where you play as a weary space buffalo trying to reach enlightenment while traversing through the many different dimensions and sort of ins and outs of space, uh, while trying to dodge certain patterns and certain obstacles that may come across your way, that may stop you on your journey towards enlightenment. So again, as I mentioned before, all of these games are available on the iOS and Google Play Store, for both iPhones and Androids. We as in Goodnight Games are a mobile app developing game uh, sort of company, and with some of the games that we're doing now, actually with this game in general, the one that I'm showing you guys here on the screen, this is most likely going to be a dual style game, but this is something without a new in regards to our reach, per se, or new. It's a new endeavor that we're trying to do. Um, I actually want to apologize. It might seem that I'm speaking a little bit too fast right now. It's kind of a bit late in the night, depending on those that operate in the morning. It is a little bit late, so I'm trying to stay as active as I can in order to sort of make it through at least until 2 o'clock. So I guess I'll sort of calm down as the hours go on, but I guess I'm just really excited, or I'm trying to excite myself in regards to just having something to talk about for the majority of the time that we're going to be doing this. So aside from that, um, aside from the games that we've released, the game that we're showing here right now is Never Go Home 2. This is the production value, or more or less, this is the development stage of Never Go Home 2, which is a sequel to one of our best-selling horror mobile games, Never Go Home, where you play as actually a ever-changing crew that is traveling through space, trying to survive as long as you can. For those that are familiar with the game Oregon Trail, it's very similar to that. You land on different planets, you pick up different materials, and your crew is always changing because they are always sort of on a dying keel as you continue to travel throughout space, while renewing your resources and just pushing the lengths of your survival as long as you can. Um, so, the game that we're working on right now, or the game that we have been doing in our previous streams up until now, has been showing Never Go Home 2. This is the first game that we're making in Unreal Engine. And again, as I mentioned before, this is kind of out of our normal realm of comfortability in regards to game development. Previously, before, the game engine that we would use is a game engine called Game Salad, which is primarily for uh, mobile-based games. It does do a little bit of arcade and a bit of like computer in terms of like itch.io, those that are familiar with Newgrounds. But it's mostly a Game Salad is mostly a mobile game engine, and it has the materials in regards to similarities to other game engines. It has the same sort of functions, excuse me, as Construct 2D and Scratch. Here, Unreal Engine, it kind of works on a more advanced scale. It does have the similar sort of beginning and ends type of functions that are similar to those that are used to like the Game Salad Scratch type of mentality, but it also works in regards to the fact that you can just convert this straight into code. And if you prefer to work in HTML or C++, Unreal Engine can accommodate for those type of needs. So the last time that we were here, we actually had the CPO, or rather, my companion, the CPO, Chief Production Officer, working on the universe for Unreal Engine, or not really Unreal Engine, for Never Go Home 2. My job here today, at least for this stream, is going to be figuring out the enemy pawn and making sure that our enemy here can actually follow our main character, and that our main character can shoot him down and take him out. So this seems to be, for those that are used to our previous streams, this seems to be an older build. I'm not sure exactly whether or not, actually I can check whether or not this is an older build, and it is. As you can tell, this is the ship from eons ago, as it has various arrows on it depicting some of the different weapons that we were planning on using for the ship. And this is sort of a good and bad thing. I didn't really want to be working with this. It seems like I might have opened up the wrong. It seems like I might have opened up the wrong build here, and I will try to see if I can find the correct one really quickly. Let's see. Let's remove that. Oh, and let's open up this. Change the folder. We're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna get rid of this. You guys are kind of seeing into the life of me, so I'm going to move this over here on the side. That way I can search for what I need to be looking for. It doesn't seem like, let's see, it might be in here. Goodnight Games. Let's try it and find out. NGH2. There's a lot of NGH2 builds, so it's kind of hard to find exactly what I'm looking for, but it should be somewhere within here. I believe that this might be the folder. And then we're going to kind of just take this from here, from the saved section here. We're going to open this up. It seems like a repository is missing. We're going to have to check this stuff out later. At least for now, what we're going to be doing is just basically working with this build and seeing how far we can get in regards to the gameplay. So again, for those that have watched us before, we reached a certain level where we had the galaxy map, the space levels, landing on the planets. Well, landing on the planets was actually something that we never, that we hadn't reached yet. But we had our ship flying through space, we had the asteroid that we could destroy, and we had the one planet that we were allowed to land on. So I'm going to see if I want to see how far back this build is, because it'll let me know how much sort of work I can get done in this hour, and then after that we're just going to work from there in regards to this one. And I might do a follow-up stream tomorrow, or rather today, now that it's Friday, later on, just sort of showing you guys where we're going to be at, or I might just follow up on Sunday when we have our other guest joining us. So we're going to go here. We're going to actually get out of the content browser. What I need to find is not any of these assets in here, because this is going to show me some of the other stuff. What I need to find are the levels, and I need to go to the test level here, and I'm going to go to don't save, because I don't want to overwrite anything, and it doesn't seem like that's what I want to be looking at. So we're going to go back to the content. We're going to go see if we can find the level that we were using before, and it doesn't seem like it's in here. So what I might actually have to do is open up another build of NGH2. It seems like this has the ship icons, that has the screenshots that we're using, that has a lot of other stuff in it. Let's see. Now there should be, if I'm doing this correctly, repository seems to have deleted or moved somewhere else. Do you want to remove this bookmark or repoint it? I might have to find this repository, but I don't want to bore you guys with that, so I'll guess I'll just look for it at another time. We're going to divert from there. We're just going to go back to the ship, and we're kind of going to pick up, this actually might help because we're going to be getting some new viewers here, so that we're going to pick up from where we left off in regards to the flying ship and the enemy pawn. I'm actually going to go back to levels really quickly just to make sure that we open up on the right sort of map. I don't want to open up in a map that's not going to depict what we need to be using, because once I press play, it's going to play the game from the scene that we're seeing here. So this is a very old scene, but we are still able to turn, we're able to shoot, so on and so forth, things working. Okay, good. And then that thing should get bigger. There we go. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the ship. We're going to see if we can actually get this working in an older build, because if we can, then that means that it'll be easier to transition over into a newer build. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go straight into we're looking for the ship BP sort of particle. So we're actually going to go here, flying, no. It's not going to be in flying, it's probably going to be in blueprints. And then we're going to go to BP ship, and I'm going to explain what, at least for our new viewers, I'm going to explain everything that you're seeing here, because most of this has actually translated over into into the most recent build. So from the left side all the way over, we're going to start off first with these things that are numbered. We have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As you can see, excuse me, as you can see underneath all of them, they have different titles. We have the 1 projectile. Excuse me. We have the 2 for dual. We have the 3 for quad, which technically should be 4 if it's a quad shot, I guess. We have the spread for 4. We have the Gatling for 5. The dual Gatling for 6. The 7 for pulse. 8 for Macross. 9 for beam. So all of the titles here are basically describing the different weapons that our ship has. Now, in game, when we actually translate this over into the most current build, all of these other weapons from 2 all the way to 7, I believe, have been unchained, because right now, as we go back to the ship here, you can see that it has all these arrows, so it means that this one ship is able to shoot out all of those sort of 9 different projectiles. Now, we've taken them all out with the exception of the Macross sort of rocket missiles and the laser beam and the standard projectile blast, I believe, as well. Actually, no, I correct myself. We've taken all of them out except for number 8, which is Macross, and number 9, which is beam. So everything from 1 to 7 has been removed from the flying pawn, and our standard 1 projectile has actually been placed into the enemy pawn. The rest of these may not live to see another day, but we might actually have some different means or different things to put them in, probably on the actual like space levels, or sorry, world levels, or we might just have some more derelict spaceships that people might interact. However, with this sort of being a survival type of horror space game, you're really not going to be interacting with that many other people. You're probably mostly just going to be running into asteroids, dodging some sort of like space debris, and sort of just landing on as many planets as you can. Space, although it seems very wide in regards to here, if I press the play button, space, like as it seems very wide, as it seems very sort of expansing, you're not really going to see that much action out of here, or if you are, it's mainly going to be in regards to either the planet that you just landed on, or the crew that's going to be sort of interacting with you differently as you sort of traverse through space. But there's not going to be like enemies seeking you out. If anything, it'll probably be coincidental that you'll run into anyone, because the difference here is that we're kind of drawing from real life, or as real as it can get, because none of us, or at least I hope, actually I don't really hope, it'd be really interesting to see if any of the players of NGH, the original one, have been into space, been to the International Space Station, or have traveled outside of sort of I guess our gravitational pull. But I think that with the technology and the means of today, not many of us have had that chance, or none of us really. A very rare few of us have had that chance to sort of travel out there. So we're kind of trying to keep this in realism in regards to the fact that space is a wide expanse. You're really going to be running into just asteroids and space debris, and even at that point, it's going to be a very rare amount of those if you're not traveling too close to a planet. I apologize. I actually have a bit of hiccups. As I was mentioning before, space is a very wide expanse, so unless you're running through like an asteroid field, you're not really going to see that much action. I think we're trying to keep this as much as into realism as possible. Granted, in regards to excitement, Some people might just like to, you know what, travel through space and just see how well it is. But for us, actually, this is not only, I guess, just to divert a little bit into, uh, I guess, my sort of feeling in regards to NGH2. This is not only a test to see how well we can do space or how real we can do space, but it's also sort of a testing ground for Unreal Engine itself. Um, One of the things for anyone that's ever interested in game design, one of the things that you need to realize is that it's good to have goals. It's good to really like set yourself up to have like a lot of goals or a lot of weapons, as you can see right here. But you also need to be realistic in regards to um, kind of the measures of what you want to do with as much knowledge as you have. So, what I mean by that is basically we have 9 different weapons chained up to this one ship. Now, let's say I only put the one enemy that I have, uh, the one enemy that I have here. If I had all 9 of those weapons available to be used, that means that I have to make 9 different buttons, and then even at that point, the person that's playing the game might only use 1 or 2 of those weapons because the other 8 of them or the other 7 of them don't shoot fast enough, don't have enough ammo, don't do enough destruction, etc., etc. Just don't have like the right color, so on and so forth. So you definitely don't want to like overwork yourself and end up having a product that's like overhauled in one area just because that's the area that you decided to push in. But you also, as I mentioned before, because this is kind of like a new area for us, we're trying to push the boundaries while also trying to keep this as realistic as possible. So the 9 weapons that you see here are kind of just my own sort of deviation in regards to like how many weapons can I make off of one of the same builds or one of the same sort of codes for projectile-based movement. So like the main one has a very simple lifespan, shoots, etc., etc. And if we go into the ship itself, into the event graph, and we scroll down all the way down, actually there should be a little section in regards to primary fire. Let's see, basic fire. So we do have our code here for the basic fire. So my main objective then was trying to see like, all right, I have the basic fire. How many sort of variations can I make from this code in itself? So I have basic fire, second fire, where I attach another sort of actor to it. Then I have sort of the pulse fire, where I attach a timer. And then I have like the quad shot, where you attach like 4 of them, and you have 5 and 6 and so on and so forth. Um, but as I mentioned before, not all of these will see the light of day in regards to once the completion of the game or once we reach a certain stage of the game where we have to sort of cut things out. Many of these might not even make it into the final game. So it's good to, as I mentioned before, it's good to have like a lot of ambition, but you also have to sort of rebound that with in regards to realism of the production of your game. So as I mentioned before, and I apologize again, excuse me. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of effort or a lot of ambition that's being put into this game, but some of these things might not make it in. And for those that are doing game development, I feel like this also stretches out to things that aren't even in game development, but like projects rather that people are trying to do, books maybe, music, etc. It's like go far, go as far as you can, and maybe even go further than that, but always bring it back uh, a tad because you may be going one step ahead or pushing too hard in one spot may take away from another area. Or it might just end up being a fruitless effort because at the end of the day, the consumer that you're selling this to is only interested in taking maybe the simplest route. Like they're not going to spend enough time to learn how each of the weapons work or how each of the pages of your book work or so on and so forth. Of course, you will have the fans and the groups that will take the time to go through every step of the game, but the vast majority of people, at least in regards to game development or in regards to game consumers, I feel like if it can be simply explained simpler. If it can be explained in a very simple way, and accessible also in a very simple way, then you're gonna reach a wider audience because you don't have to teach someone or sort of walk someone through how to play the game. They can just pick it up and figure it out for themselves, kind of. So I'm actually going to take a break really quickly. I actually need to find my charger and plug that in. That way we don't lose the stream here. Again, I do want to mention to those that are just joining us, we have a game that is currently on its way to being released. Malevolent Machines will release sometime this month. It is a endless runner game where you play as the Technomancer Layla, and you control both herself and her massive Juggerbot as you fight against endless waves of enemies, both mechanical and organic, using your Technomancy skills to combat them, and dodging and maneuvering through certain obstacles as you travel through a total of 5 worlds and 5 individual levels inside those worlds. The game releases for both iOS and the Google App Store sometime later this month. I believe the exact date of release is February 7th. However, if you want further information in regards to some of the production value and the release date of that, be sure to follow us not only here on Twitch, but also look out for our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all under the same name, Goodnight Games. So what we're going to do right now is I'm actually going to end up deleting a lot of the things from this main build here, because if this is what I have to work with, at least for today, I want to make sure that I'm not going to sort of overhaul myself in regards to everything that I'm seeing. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to go into the flying pawn. We're going to go down to all of these things here. So as you can see, he has the basic fire, the double shot, the quad shot, the spread shot, Gatling, dual Gat, all this stuff, laser beam, insanity, Macross. Oh boy, this is actually a lot. I kind of went a bit mad in regards to all of the weapons that you see here. Granted, I do think that it looks pretty cool in regards to like what I'm firing. Let's see if I can turn around, that way the sun's not in the direct line of sight. We're going to try to go a little bit forward as well. So we're going to turn around and we're going to shoot the first one. So as you can see, like the first one's blue, fires off at a regular pace. Every time I press it, the second one fires like a delayed shot, like a 1-2 punch. And if I press that again, then we get our sort of like pattern that you have here, very similar to sort of like Star Wars. Granted, there are no sounds, but the weapons, I think, look really cool with their texturing and with everything that they have right now. I'm actually going to turn around just a bit so that way we can still see the ship. Alright, we're going to stay right there. Number 3, we have a double, or rather, this is the quad shot, and this is the joke that I made before where I was like, it fires 4 shots, but it's attached to my number 3 button, so it kind of doesn't really make much sense. But again, I can tap this a multitude of times and it fires a volley of weapons. Now I can also maneuver while I do this, so I don't have to worry about like I guess the pattern really, like as if I decide to turn and shoot, I can actually do that. And all of this stuff, while you're looking at this as an older build, the 2 buttons here on the bottom sort of left side have been changed out, and it is sort of like a joystick type of movement. So you can make like very sharp turns, very long turns. You can move forward and back, etc., etc. And the health bars and the 2 bars that you're seeing up there for like boost and sort of ammo have kind of been changed as well. So moving forward, to explain the rest of the shots, we have our spread shot. For those that have ever played Contra, this is very similar to the spread shot. It fires 5 blasts in an area that spreads out, I guess for a radius of about like 2 seconds, I think. I think it covers about a 90-degree angle, and they all spread out, and they live for about 2 seconds. Again, you can also move while firing this, making a really cool display of weapons. I think that if I ever want to do like an enemy sort of like starship and include that into this game, I think I might, just because of how cool some of these weapons look. Like it really reminds me of Star Wars and Star Trek. For any of those that know any of those two franchises, I feel like they're both actually no, very famous franchises. Number five is the first Gatling gun. I was wondering what was happening. I was like, what? Like, why is it only firing one shot? Number five is the Gatling gun shot. Now, this is a continuous shot that is fired as long as you hold on to the button. I realized that in kind of a weird sense, one of the things, because I haven't streamed in so long, I'm actually talking continuously as I mentioned it. It's a good thing that I'm bringing this up while I'm talking about the Gatling gun, but I think it's very important to take pauses, just so that way I don't end up like biting my tongue and sort of rolling on and sort of mumbling and repeating some of the words that I'm using. So one of the things that was really interesting or really fun to code, getting back on topic in regards to the weapons, was the Gatling gun, just because um, it doesn't follow the same mechanics in regards to the 1, 2, 3, 4 shots. Like they all fire at the same time. I think having a delay, I mean, the second shot fires at a bit of a delay, but it's only like, I think, 0.2 seconds. If we go in and check, we can actually find out. I'm going to exit out really quickly. I really want to see what is the firing rate that I had for this double shot here. I had it delaying for like 0.2 seconds. And then if I go over to the first Gatling gun, I think I also had it delaying, but I had the delay at 0.3, but I also changed the shape in regards to the spawn points for the particular weapons that we had here. So going back into the world itself, this was very interesting, at least for me, just because all of the shots that you see here are kind of firing from the same plane, from the same horizontal plane, rather. They're not really firing vertically up or vertically down. It'll only depend on if I like turn the ship to a side and shoot. Do the weapons kind of like curve, and they can like intersect and overlap and fire and move at their own sort of distance. With the Gatling gun itself, it was very fun to code because aside from like as you see when I turn with the spread shot, it kind of fires at an angle. But the Gatling gun itself does fire, but it also fires forward, down, and to the bottom left. Or I guess it goes forward, bottom left, and then down. It's kind of a weird thing. But it also fires where it's like it's a continuous fire. So all of these I can hold, and it's like, oh, it's the same level, same rate. With the Gatling gun, it narrows them out, but it also sort of follows the same type of pattern. Now, this means that I can hit enemies that are lower or higher than me because it's not on the same plane as as you can see, if I fire both the Gatling and the regular shot, or rather the Gatling and the spread shot, like they're not on the same vertical plane. So this was something that I guess I really liked, just because it's something that's a bit different in regards to the plane that you're seeing here in the game. The ship itself stays on the same horizontal plane. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. Most of the enemies will be approaching you from this kind of like invisible floor plane. Like nothing will come from below where the ship's line of sight is, and nothing will come from above. And if it does, then it'll always like overlap in regards to the same plane that is able to be shot at. I think we're gonna actually change that a bit later on in regards to the production of the asteroids. I think because they have such an erratic movement in real space, that having them stay on the same sort of like floor plane or even level horizon line type of plane might just seem a bit weird. I also realized that I've said plane about 50 times within 2 minutes, so I'm gonna just stop that for now and go back to describing the plane. There we go. Go back to describing the different weapons that we have here. So moving on to number 6, we have the double Gatling shot, which fires from the top right or top lower left and I guess right direction, but it also fires from the opposite in the counterclockwise direction. So if you're looking here at the ship, I'm trying to see if I can get my mouse to appear. But if you see the two turbines in the back of the ship, that's kind of where the other two. If we go back into, actually, I'll just show you because it's very easy to show rather than tell. Another interesting fact to keep in mind. Ooh. If I show you what I'm talking about, so the different shots here, and I know I remember most of these. So the red shots that you see here are the red ones that angle out are obviously the spread shot. The Gatling gun here is the yellow, the ones that move up, down, and around. And as you can see, the yellow one at the top is at the highest point. These two are still at the same two levels. The green shot, what is the green shot? Oh, it seems like that's the triple? Or maybe those are actually for something else. I can't exactly tell. It seems like there are 3 different green shots. One of these is definitely the laser, but there are 2 other green shots here which I can't seem to discern for what they are. But I know that the 2 orange or the 4 orange here are the quad shots. The 2 purples I believe are the doubles. I think that what's happening here is that you're seeing an overlap. I think that we actually have the dual Gatlings are also on top of the quad shots here. And then all the way in the back, we have our Macross sort of heat-seeking, or not really heat-seeking, enemy-seeking missiles. So if we go back into the play button, and I'm actually going to turn in at an angle that you guys can see both the ship and the projectile. Number 6 fires in a weird sort of pattern, but it also does similarly to the spread shot, which I think is number 4. Yep, similar to the spread shot. It fires our weapons from a multitude of angles, and it allows for a really cool type of like double shot type of scenario. Originally, when we planned to have the multitude of weapons for the main player ship, it was just to have different ways of taking down your enemies. Now, one of the things that we did change in regards to, and this is again simplifying your features for ease of accessibility. One of the things that we simplified in regards to firing for the player ship was that we just kept it to the heat-seeking missiles because in mobile games in particular, it's much easier to point at what you want to shoot rather than press a button to shoot, if that kind of makes any sense. So what I mean by that is instead of having a button right over here where it says like press to shoot, and then you have to also make sure that you're aimed and lined up with your enemy, it's much easier to press the enemy itself and have your ship shoot on that command and then have the projectile move on its own towards the enemy. Mostly, for most mobile game players, you're really just playing this on a commute. You're traveling from either the bus, the train, the car ride, or you're handing it off to a kid that either has reached a certain age where they can still play games on mobile, or if you're handing this to a loved one or something like that, then you're really not expecting them to just entertain themselves for more than maybe about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the age range. So at that point, you want to simplify the fact that your functions can, again, be easily accessible and be easily sort of maintained as you go throughout your game development process. So, again, as I mentioned before, it's much easier to target your enemy and have the projectile move on its own rather than for you to line up your shot, make sure you're like angled correctly, and then shoot again, so on and so forth until the enemy is taken down. And that's to say if the enemy stays in one place. Like let's say the enemy was moving up or down or in an erratic motion, and you also have to track them as well. And then as you can see in this game, our projectiles tend to drag on, like they have a delay in regards to how far you shoot. So if I'm moving as I'm shooting, my bullets will travel sort of at another angle or at the angle that I was previously at. So I can never fire. I can't fire faster. I can't fire, and my bullets can't move faster than I'm moving. Which is also just an aesthetic, but it also ties it back into reality, where it's like if you're throwing something, and you move as you throw it, it's gonna throw it somewhere in between the direction of you moving from your starting position to your ending position. It's never gonna be at the place where you started to throw it or at the place that you ended to land. If that makes sense for any of our physics majors or our physics connoisseurs. Um, so continuing on that note, our dual Gatling shot does fire at a separate rate, and it does have its own sort of speed. Again, I guess to diverge again to another topic of color coordination, we kept it the same color as our regular Gatling shot, and the same goes for our first three sort of main shots. So the primary shot is blue, the secondary shot is blue, and the quad shot is blue because they all kind of have the same properties. The spread shot is green because, again, it fires 5 weapons instead of the standard 4 or the 3 at a time. And it can also be used to take out different enemies. So let's say we have a certain ship or a certain asteroid that like you can only take out by shooting it basically with the first, second, and third shots. The spread shot can take out a multitude of enemies that are coming at you, which is much better to use rather than like moving and aiming with each enemy with your basic fire. And the 5 and 6 again are sort of our Gatling weapons. And interestingly enough, because I am using my keyboard, I can probably press all 5 of these at the same time and have them all fire off. So I'm going to try that out really quickly, and hopefully it doesn't crash the stream, nor does it crash Unreal Engine. So we're going to start off with the first shot, then we're going to link up the second, and third, and fourth, and the fifth. So it's quite a display here. And if I can maneuver my other hand here, we're going to get the dual Gatling shot, and we're going to end that. And I'm actually going to see if I can move while shooting all of these. It doesn't seem like I can. Oh, there we go. There we go. So that's an interesting display. Moving forward to our next weapon, which is actually something that I enjoyed a lot in regards to coding. I really want to go back into this and see how I did this for a second. So we're going to go into our pulse bomb and see what I had for the code for this. So this is a very interesting sort of weapon. It fires at a very slow rate, and it also has a sort of like delay in regards to the secondary action that it does. So if you remembered, if anyone had saw when I shot it off the first time, it's basically a small, slow moving projectile that expands after a certain amount of time into sort of a gravitational bomb. I'm actually going to display it really quickly, and then we're going to go into the separate code that I have for it. So I have it keyed to the number 7 key. I'm going to press that once. I'm going to see the slow moving ball. Excuse me. And then as you can see, it gets a lot bigger, then it disperses. Very similar to, I guess, grenade launcher type of weapons, or just slow moving missiles, or torpedoes rather. This is one of the weapons that I kind of really want to see incorporated into the enemies when we have it for our later dates. I wonder if I can fire more than one. Oh no, I fixed that code, so that's cool. Basically, it's kind of like a one-shot, one-hit quit type of weapon, but it also can draw in some of the other materials that might be floating around in space, or the other enemies rather, if you're fighting like an armada of, I guess, an invading alien army or something like that. Again, all of these are also, again, all of these are possible to be included into the final game. But the one thing that I liked about this is it's not. I don't know. Like I feel like it's semi unique in regards to space shooters. Like mostly you do get like the fast firing like weapons, but I think the coolest ones are often the slowest moving weapons because space kind of has that thing where it's like if you shoot a gun in space, then you will move as fast as that gunshot has been taken. So when you see something move slow in space, that means that it doesn't really have that much of its own like inertia or its own like potential energy type of movement to it. Um, and I think that that's just one of those things that's like more dangerous. Like the slow moving thing is a little bit more dangerous than the fast moving thing in space. Uh, at least in my own opinion. Of course, a meteorite or an asteroid is gonna take out someone way faster than like a slow moving like rock that might hit someone. But it just looks more menacing, I feel. And the fact that it changes its size to such a large scale also makes it really like threatening. Like I think that I made the scale of the orb as big as the ship in regards to its final evolution or its final form. um, so one of the things, yeah, we're actually going to pause this real quick and go into the code, and we're going to pause the game, go into the ship itself because all the code again that you're seeing for the different weapons are in here. The weapons themselves each have what is their own asteroid sort of destroy actor. So this up here is set to destroy the asteroid if it ever interacts with it, and this right here is the lifespan for said projectile. So the projectile will always, I believe most of them, destroy themselves after 2 seconds. Some of them destroy themselves after 1. The pulse here, because I think it's like the longest living one aside from the laser, destroys itself after 5 seconds, and then after 4 seconds it changes its scale. It multiplies its scale times 10, which is actually really interesting. But what we have in regards to the flying pawn, and this is interesting because, in my opinion, this should look almost exactly like the basic shot. So up here, if we go back into the basic shot, for those that are new to Unreal, I'm actually going to take a moment and explain what you all are seeing in regards to having a basic weapon fire for a what is this? For a ship. And I'm again, I apologize. It seems like my excitement is kind of slowing down as the hours go on. I might actually just close this off early. So I'm going to describe what the basic fire is doing, and then continue onward in regards to what we have a little bit later. So the basic fire, it's set to a key press, which as you can see is all the way up here. We have the 1 key press, which then chains off, and this is for any of the developers that are, or any of the up-and-coming developers that are wondering on how to code for Unreal. This is how you do your basic weapon firing. So we might section this part of the stream off for those that are interested in a tutorial on how to do a primary fire for your weapon. So the first thing you want to do is set your key press. This can be any key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 through 0, Q, W, E, R, T, etc., etc. Your key press will have 2 functions, once it's pressed and once it's released. You're going to take your pressed function, drag that off to a do once, mainly because you don't want this sort of function to fire off multiple weapons. Unless you do, then you'll take this sort of do once equation out of the entire code for now. But for the sake of our basic primary weapon that will fire only once you tap the 1 key, you leave it to the do once. The do once is completed, and it goes into a function for a custom event, which I'll explain down here. The custom event then starts its own timer, which does its own sort of values, but it also follows its own firing rate. So all of this up here is basically doing the action of the custom event once, but it's also firing at a certain rate, and it's allowing for looping. So it's a two-parter. So you have the function up here, and then you have the thing that it's doing down here. So these two technically aren't connected, but they do work because they're connected through the same custom event. Like, they're not physically connected by meaning this section here is not connected to that, but they are, as I mentioned before, connected because the custom event here is also acting in its own function up here. So you have all of this, the key press, which calls the function. So this right here, this blue section right here, is calling everything from this custom event down here, which then is set at its own timer, and then the time that you're seeing here, the 1/4, is the firing rate of the projectile. So the custom event that we have here, we called it fire. What fire does is spawn this certain projectile. So this fire thing here is going to spawn our little friend, our projectile that you're seeing every time I press the 1 key. And then as we go back into the projectile, it has its own lifespan and own sort of properties and values that it does once it's created in the world. The function also has to spawn from a certain spot, so we have to get a world transform, and this is where, if we go back into the viewport, the arrows take place. So in a perfect world, or actually in the real world or in any sort of regular world, if you fire a weapon, it has to come from a nozzle or a nuzzle, and sort of shoot from a chamber of a gun or a barrel or a laser, perhaps. If you don't have it spawning from there, then it's just going to come out of thin air. And if that's how you want to create your game, then by all means, you can have randomly spawning lasers from the pocket dimensions of space. But in regards to NGH2, let's see, where did I put that? We're going back into the event graph here. We've had to get the world transform, which is from its own spawn point, which is what we called here our projectile spawn point. So the projectile spawn point is one of the arrow functions that you're seeing again in the ship itself. Because if we didn't have that function there, it would just be spawning from one random spot every time we pressed it, and we'd have to find that random spot every time our function sort of enacted. So to bring it back around, the thing that I wanted to get at was that the most unique thing about both the standard projectile and the 7 pulse is that I believe that they do have the same functions. So I think that the pulse weapon is going to look exactly like this, and we're actually going to go down and we're going to see if we can find it. I think it's right under double shot. If this lets me scroll down, it seems like we are having some technical difficulties. I believe that this might have froze up on me. So we're just going to take a second, and hopefully my voice input is actually still being captured. I hope. It seems like it's still recording, but the game itself, in regards to Unreal Engine, seems to have just taken a bit of a hiccup. And there we go. And we're back. So what I want to see again is if the function here, and we're going to check this again. We have our basic fire, do once, fire, set timer, firing rate, and then our function down here. If this is the same sort of code, I believe it should be, as the pulse weapon. And we're going to go down into here, and we do have it. Ooh. And we do have it there. However, there is something new that I didn't take into account, which seems to be the delay. Now, this is a very interesting sort of notion, and I actually had forgotten about this. The cool part, or the thing that sets the, and I think I might have put this for the laser as well, the thing that sets the pulse weapon apart from the other projectiles in the game, or in this sort of build of the game, is that you can continuously press, the regular weapons. What I changed in regards to the pulse bomb that you guys are seeing here is that if I press it, I have to wait until the second one sort of comes out before I can destroy. Oh, it seems like something's up. Let's go back into the world. Press this. It seems like I have to wait until this button or this bomb blows up before I can fire another one. So once it destroys itself, I'm able to sort of spawn another weapon. Now with the other ones, that's not the case. I can press them continuously as much as I want, and the other weapons will go. Actually, I can hold all of these continuously, and these weapons will fire indefinitely, um, forever, really. Uh, the thing that sets that apart again is the delay that I put in for the bomb here, which is tied, I believe, to the lifespan. I think that they're both equaled out at the same time, and we're actually going to check that out and find out for ourselves. So we're gonna go up here into the flying pond. We have the delay here that is set for 5 seconds. If we go into, and we can cancel out the rest of these, if we go into our pulse bomb here, what it should tell me is that the delay here is 5 seconds. So the lifespan here is 4. The delay that you're seeing right here is the change in size. So once our little projectile or little bomb is created in the world, it travels for about 4 seconds, then it changes its size, and then on the 5th second, it dies. So until those 5 seconds, and this is one thing that I had totally overlooked that I might want to include back in for some of our future sort of, or actually the most recent build, at least in regards to the weapon firing for maybe some of the crewmen, is that putting a delay in between the timer that clears it and the do once function sort of stops you from firing until that projectile has either destroyed itself or interacted with another character, thus also being destroyed. So this is actually I guess, a saving grace in regards to checking into old builds in order to find, I guess, past endeavors. um, so going back into the world, what we're going to see is that, again, when I fire all of these weapons out, we have, we have our multitude of weapons that fire at different firing rates, and this is kind of just another sort of reiteration in regards to, or at least this stream, I feel, is another reiteration in regards to the firing rate of enemies. Again, this is a bit later than what we usually do for our streams, so I apologize for rambling and maybe showing you guys, or at least the older audience, something that they've already seen. I think that in regards to the newer audience, setting them up with something flashy is always pretty good, but I will most likely do a follow-up later on in the day when I'm actually cognitively awake and alert. So our little 7 function here, which fires off its own sort of weapon. Now we do have them across sort of sort of missile rockets that fire off on the sides. Granted, there is no active enemy within this world, so they won't target. They won't really target anything, at least not in this build. And this is something that I do want to show the viewers, the viewers, in regards to our latest build, because we do have these functioning correctly. So the cool thing, and this is what I mentioned before in regards to eliminating things for ease of accessibility, the cool thing is that this is one of the weapons that we've decided to keep for the player ship. We decided to keep them across weapons because it's kind of like an easy, and not an easy out, but it kind of makes sense, really. I don't know. Like a basic fire, it's going to take some time to destroy your enemies by firing one shot each time, especially if it's not at this sort of firing rate. With the quad shot, that's probably the best that you could do in regards to like upgrades. Like let's say, of course, you upgrade from 1 to 2 to 4. Like let's say this is your most powerful. So um, the quad shot is probably the best that you could do in regards to like standard taking down an opponent. Again, the spread shot has its advantages, but it still leaves those sort of four angles of sort of like openness, and if someone is coming at you from one of those four, you have to then maneuver and turn, and then it kind of turns into a basic shot again, especially because the ship doesn't just horizontally turn on an axle; it actually spins and curves. So you're probably only really going to get still like one shot out of each sort of barrel. Again, with the Gatling guns, it's kind of just like another concentrated rapid fire version of the single shot. But again, if you move with it, it still does the same thing where it follows. Now, with the Macross here, this is going to function, or this does function in the way that we have, where you tap the enemy and these four weapons, they shoot out, and immediately once they realize that there is a thing locked on, they automatically all change their directions to hit the enemy. So you're hitting the enemy with four larger bullets. As you can see, if I continually hold on to these bullets are at least twice the size of the standard projectile. They might even be like four times the size of that. But you're hitting them with basically like four giant missiles at the same time. And this is one that you can spam. So for those that have ever seen, the reason why it's called Macross, there's an anime called Macross Fighter. Anyone that's ever watched Gundam, Space Captain Harlock, Cowboy Bebop, you will be akin, or you will be used to seeing some of those like rapid fire like missiles that just have like the auto aim sort of aimbot lock on Soldier 76 type of thing, where it's like they will automatically seek out any enemy that is on them. And again, with this function, you are now pressing the enemy, you're tapping on the enemy, and these will fire on effort. Now, this is again an older build, so every time I tap the 8 key, it's going to fire out these four weapons. And that's actually something that I do want to show for the later viewers. I'm going to have to sort of do some sleuth work and try to find the most updated build. So last but not least, in regards to the weapons that we have here, we do have our laser beam, which stops me from moving horizontally, so I can move horizontally, so on and so forth. But when I press the laser, it actually just keeps me still, and I don't think it allows me to move or fire until that laser is out. Let's see. Let me see again. I'm going to press the 9 button, and it'll allow me to fire the laser, but it doesn't allow me to shoot another one. Now, this is interesting. Why is it not allowing me to shoot another laser beam? One of the things that I do want to check is the code here for the laser. What is this? This is a lot of stuff. Spawn emitter, line trace, get actor location, spawn actor beam. It doesn't seem to have a clear timer. I think that's the one thing that's changing it. So we're going to just take a, let's see, clear timer by function name, and that's what we need to put in here because it's not letting me fire another one. So we're just going to do that. We're going to actually fix this in an older build. Timer by function name. The function name that we want to change is laser fire. Oh, and this is laser underscore fire. So I need to make sure that I'm using the right vocabulary. And we grab that into the reset. We're actually going to change this up a bit. I'm going to go back into the laser itself. I'm going to make sure that I check the lifespan of this. It seems to be spanning to 1 second. I'm actually going to change it to 2. Then we're going to go back into the pulse. I don't need to see this. We're going to compile and save the laser beam. I'm going to exit out of that. Then we're going to go in here and we're going to take the reset and we're going to call a delay, and we're going to make sure that the delay is timed up to 2 seconds to match the function that we have here for the do one. So that way we can only fire one laser at a time, and that it doesn't do that like a sort of ribbon effect of just like laser beams firing from all orifices. So again, going back into our laser beam, this is a function that we have that allows basically just like main mass destruction. Again, this is kind of a basic thing. I wonder if it will let me actually move while I'm firing. So I can move to the side, and what you're going to see is that this is actually a continuous beam. While it does look like it stops there, one of the interesting things is that if I turn full horizontal, like you're gonna see how long it goes, but you're not gonna see how far it travels. So I actually need to go into the laser beam itself, so that way you guys can get, I guess, a quick analogy in regards to the viewport. So this is the entire laser beam. Like this thing is pretty massive, and I'm only looking at it. Like the ship itself is about the size of that little orb there. So while it does look small in game, it's actually like really, 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 really big. Um, but again, it's just a, and this is an interesting thing. It's kind of just like a standard cannon like type of laser beam. Like it doesn't spread out. I think one of the things that we might try to do in regards to the future, the future of the game is just sort of fan and spread out the laser beam to just destroy a, like, massacre, like uh, a wide swath of sorry, of enemies. But again, that's probably going to be in there for the future. So, in order to save you guys from any more future rambling, I'm actually going to sort of close it out here. Again, you guys have been a wonderful audience. Thank you all for joining me on this very, very late stream. I apologize. I will do a follow-up. I'm not making any promises, but I will most likely do a follow-up later today in regards to just showing you guys the Macross functions. Finally, I think that a lot of people have been waiting for that. And then just showing you the enemies functions in the most recent build that we have, so that way we can take them down. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining the stream. Be sure to follow us on Goodnight Games, both Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, etc. We do SlideDB articles. Excuse me. And again, also be sure to check out. Be sure to check out all of our social medias. I apologize. Be sure to check out all of our social medias in regards to Malevolent Machines, the most recent game that we have releasing this month. Again, it is an endless runner where you play as Technomancer and her giant, massive Juggerbot as you traverse through 5 different worlds, defeating various enemies by dodging, shooting, and blasting them to smithereens. So, I've been the artist with the fro. This is Goodnight Games, Twitchy Terrible Thursday, and thanks for the show.